What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy, CamATL, and welcome back to another NFL video. In this video, as you guys know, early on in the week, we do the first look lineup video where we pretty much just focus on the guys we're putting in the lineup. And, we don't broad out to talk about too many extra out of the, lineup players. We focus on just building the lineup together. And then this video is going to be position by position, breaking down each player that I like, why I like them, who I'm not very into, stuff like that. So pretty much just breaking down a player pool of guys that I'm interested in on this slate, that I will be getting some exposure to and that I think y'all should be getting some exposure to. It was a fantastic way to start the season last night. GreenlightDFS.com. We smashed the NFL Showdown for the first game of the year. It's going to be a fantastic season. Incredibly excited for it. The NFL player prop tool is popping on multiple players as really, really good value still over on Prize Picks, so make sure you take advantage of that. Just excited to get into this, man. So as you guys know, position by position, full slate breakdown, week one. Let's get it. So, starting off at quarterback, we got Lamar Jackson at the top of the list. Should not be much of a shocker there. The rushing ability that Lamar Jackson has just always puts him at the top of the list. At the end of the day, he's just going to be running all over the place here. His floor is just tremendously high. When it comes to raw points and that what I expect the highest scoring quarterback to be on this slate, I would have to have Lamar Jackson up there in the bunch. And the fact that he can get you that solid floor rushing, you really don't have to pair him with anybody. You know what I mean? You don't have to pair Lamar Jackson. You can run him solo if you would like to in your lineups. I love Lamar Jackson against the Jets. Next up, Kyler Murray. We talked about it. If you're going to grab some of those Arizona value guys, you're going to stack up that Arizona offense, then Kyler Murray is a great bet to stack them with. All right? Kyler Murray is another guy who could do it with his feet as well. He can, he does more through the air than Lamar does. So Kyler Murray is an interesting play as well at 7-2. I really like him. I'm not going to have a ton of Mahomes at 7-7. Jalen Hurts I have some interest in at 6-8 because of, once again, the rushing ability that he has. Most of the time, almost every single week of the slate, unless I'm just full stacking on a quarterback side, I go with a quarterback who can also run the ball. That just gives me a solid floor. It gives me crazy upside. It's just the way I've always played it. So I always lean running quarterbacks, running capable quarterbacks, but there are times where if a quarterback's price is just too cheap or I'm loving an offense so much that I will stack the whole offense and not really worry about the quarterback being able to run. But most times, quarterbacks that I choose can run. Justin Herbert at 7-6, honestly, I'm not going to have a ton over that 7-3 Lamar Jackson range. I feel like if I'm going to pay 7-6 for Herbert, the only reason you're doing this is if you're stacking the Chargers. All right, plain and simple. The only reason you're doing that is stacking. All right, same thing with Mahomes. The only reason you're doing that is you're stacking with Kelsey. And you're stacking with some of those other cheaper Kansas City guys now that Tyreek Hill is out. All right, that's the only reason you're spending that money up there, because outside of that, you can just get the guys of who can really run the ball. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, those guys. Kirk Cousins is a very interesting play to me at 6-1. He's going against Green Bay. Solid game here in general, I think. This is in a dome in Minnesota. Really like Kirk Cousins here because I really like Adam Thielen, and I'll talk about him when we go to wide receiver, but I really like Adam Thielen. I really like Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins has some huge targets in that offense. I think he's going to be a very solid play, and at only 6-1, he's a guy who's not going to run. He doesn't give you that rushing ability that Lamar, Kyler, and Jalen does, which is the down part of him. But it is an interesting stack for GPPs to stack Kirk Cousins with Jefferson and Thielen. Both of those guys are fantastic plays this week. Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to wait and see basis on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to find a way to make things happen, obviously. He's a beast. Losing Devontae Adams is a huge, that will affect him a lot because he really relied on Devontae a lot throughout the years. So we'll see what happens there, but he definitely doesn't have the greatest supporting cast, so I won't have a ton of that. Let's sort point per salary now that we got the top spend guys out of the way, and let's just look just value options. All right, so here are the value guys that I'm really liking. So my core, right? If I'm spending up at quarterback, I love Lamar Jackson. Is there that possibility that Baltimore just blows the Jets out of the water and that affects Lamar a little bit? Sure. Um, the Jets are projected. Let me see. The Jets are projected to score. Let me see. What were the Jets projected to score? 18-25. So it's a 7 point spread right now for Baltimore. But I mean, that rushing ability is just too good for Lamar. So Lamar, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones. I want to talk about Daniel Jones because once again, this is another guy who can really run the ball. He has some decent weapons in the pass game. And he's just a solid option here. It is in Tennessee. We'd wish to see him at home in New York, but at the end of the day, he's a solid option. Marcus Mariota, another guy, super cheap. If you're spending down, I'm thinking Jameis Winston against a bad Atlanta defense, unless we just somehow got better for some crazy odd reason. But Jameis Winston against Atlanta in a dome. As you guys know, that's another plus. In a dome is always good. Winston can whip this thing around. We all know Winston can throw for 500 yards. Dude can really have huge games. So at 5'3" in a dome, that's an interesting spot here at 5'3". All right, for Jameis Winston. Daniel Jones, rushing ability, very capable at 5K, like him. Marcus Mariota at 5'2", another guy that you can definitely play with. These guys are all pretty much GPP options, though. I think in cash games, majority of the time, I mean, you can go a Daniel Jones or a Mariota or a Winston in cash, that's fine if you have to spend up other places. But most times, what I have seen over the years is that I pretty much can get my favorite quarterback and make sure that I get a quarterback who's really going to give me that solid floor that I can feel comfortable with. And that's Lamar Jackson at the top. And if you spend down, that's Mariota, Daniel Jones, Winston, those guys. All right. One last guy I want to talk about. I know people might, like Trey Lance. I'm on a wait and see here with Trey Lance at 6K. Derek Carr, with the addition of Devontae Adams, Derek Carr is very interesting to me. This game should be a good one. It's in Los Angeles. This is a good spot here for Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is going to be having to throw the ball a lot. I think with his new weapon of Devontae Adams, it's going to be fantastic. If you want to pair up Derek Carr with Devontae Adams, I can already tell you that's probably a low-owned stack, so it's interesting. Let's move over to running backs. I'm still sorted point per salary. Let's talk value guys in general. We got Najee Harris at 6'4" at the top of the list. Now, not only, we already talked about this in the first look lineup, not only does Najee Harris play damn near 100% of snaps, right? But he gets the between the tackles running. He gets every rushing opportunity. Plus, he gets dump offs like crazy. You know what I mean? So Trubisky's really going to lean on him to really help him out here in this one. So Najee Harris, I really like Najee Harris at 6'4". Joe Mixon, I talked about Joe Mixon too. I think in the beginning of these seasons, this team, I think Cincinnati comes out and leans on the run, and rightfully so. I think Joe Mixon gets a ton of run here. He plays a lot of the snaps of this offense. Once again, just a solid option at 7'1". All right, Christian McCaffrey at 8'5". You're having to spend some money for McCaffrey. He's banged up once again, I'm hearing. He's got like a shin issue going on. I just don't know what to feel here about Christian McCaffrey yet. With him being banged up a little bit, if he comes in 100%, then you have to expect that he's going to get some solid work. He's going to get some solid little dump offs and stuff like that. That's where he's really going to shine in this situation. So we will see. Baker Mayfield, I could see Baker Mayfield really leaning on Christian McCaffrey heavy on little dump offs and stuff like that if he's being pressured or whatever. So McCaffrey is interesting at 8'5". He's always interesting, though. I mean, I'm going to think Christian McCaffrey is a decent play every single week of the season. That's just because he is, as long as he's healthy and he's in the game. But these days, you don't really know if he's going to stay in the game. So that's the problem there, but I got to talk about him at least. All right, J.K. Dobbins against the Jets is interesting. Dobbins is a guy who, when he has gotten his opportunities, he's been solid. Now, he's coming in as, limited. He's had limited practices, all that stuff. So we got to really, really see that. But he is a guy that's got a high skill level, okay? And we'll have to see. If Dobbins is in fact in, he's going to be a solid play at 5'6". I really like him against the Jets, especially in a favored position, right? But if he's going to be limited in any way, which you want to keep an eye on. So far, over the last day or two, he's still been limited a bit. So I don't know if he's going to get his full run. Honestly, because of the limited practice on Thursday, I think I'd drop him down to more of like a 11, 10 range. He's not somebody. I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't not put him in much lineups at all. But he is a solid value that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, top overall, one of the top overall running back options that you have this week is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's a fantastic option if you have the money to do so. There's a lot of solid mid-range-ish running backs that we have available to us, like Najee's, Joe Mixon's, guys like that I haven't really felt like I had to really spend up for Jonathan Taylor, but Jonathan Taylor's an absolute monster. If you have the money, always go for it. All right, Deandre Swift, let's talk about it. Full point PPR for DK. Deandre Swift's going to be good week in, week out. He's a solid really solid pass catching running back, and I really love Deandre Swift. Dude's got just a ton of talent. This dude's going to really break out one season, and it could be this one. So we'll see what happens. This is a very interesting spot here for Deandre Swift for sure. I think his ownership's going to be low, as it always is, because he's not a guy who gets all the carries or is even on the field for all the snaps or nothing like that. But he is a guy that could get a lot of work here if Philly pulls off and Detroit's having to do a ton of little dump-off passes to DeAndre. He could really break out here, all right? So full-point PPR, remember, that's the game plan you really want to lean with. Derrick Henry at 8.6. I don't have a ton of exposure to him because Derrick Henry doesn't get a ton of exposure in the pass game anyway. He's going to get a ton of work. He's going to dominate, blah, 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 blah. We all know that. But at 8.6, I'd rather just get up to Jonathan Taylor, who also gets a little work in the pass game and stuff like that. So Austin Eckler at 8.2. Eckler is another one of those running backs that in PPR leagues, he is just a monster year in, year out. So he's a very solid option at 8.2. Alvin Kamara is right here at 7.6. I think Winston's really going to lean on him a lot as well. Alvin Kamara against Atlanta, that matchup is always good. Travis Etienne, I believe you say his name. Travis is a guy who's got a lot of potential. This is a running back that's got a lot of potential, and he really could do big things this season. So keep an eye on him. I'm not going to have much of him week one, but definitely keep an eye on him. So guys that I really, really like, it's going to be Jonathan Taylor at the top if you're spending up for running back. And then you've got the Christian McCaffrey range. If he is healthy and good and that shin's not an issue, he's going to be 100%. I expect Mayfield to really lean on him. Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler. And that's kind of the core that I'm staying with right there. I like Antonio Gibson against Jacksonville at 5.8. That's another solid option as well. But most of the range, I'm staying up. I mean, I'm liking the spend-up range for running backs this week. I really am. There's not a ton of cheap guys that I have a ton of interest in this week. It's mainly going those 7K range guys that I really, really like. There's a lot of guys in great spots. And there is some value at wide receiver to be able to, get those running backs you want. So that's the way I'm game planning for running back. Wide receiver, as you could see, immediately when this pops up, 5.5, 4K, 3K, 4.1, 7.8. Yeah, that's a spend up, but 3.4, 5.8. As you could see already, the value at wide receiver is where it's at this week. So I don't see a ton of point in spending up for wide receiver. The only wide receiver that I would spend up for if I'm spending up is going to be Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams. One of these two guys. If I'm spending up, I'm going one of these two guys, Jefferson or Adams, Jefferson or Adams. Now, if you're going Kirk Cousins, that makes it even more of a reason to go Jefferson. If you're going Derek Carr, makes even more of a reason to go Devontae Adams. I think that stack is perfectly fine no matter what you do this week. I think that stack will be perfectly fine. I think you could easily go a Derek Carr paired with Devontae Adams, two stud running backs, decent wide receivers, and you're good to go. And it's a solid lineup. So there's plenty of ways that you could go this week, but the first thing that I have really noticed is that outside of the Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, we have tremendous value at wide receiver. Michael Pittman at 5.5. This dude's one of the more talented receivers in the entire league. He's still young. He's still got ways to grow, but I think he comes in. He has a fantastic year this year. Like I talked about in the first look lineup, Matt Ryan likes to look at his ones and really zone in on these guys. Expect Michael Pittman to get a ton of attention out of Matt Ryan. Rondale Moore, DeAndre Hopkins out. We all know. Christian Kirk's gone. Rondale Moore is in a solid spot here at 4K. Another cheap value wide receiver that is in a good spot, especially pairing with Kyler Murray or just run Rondale solo. At 4K, you can do whatever you need to do. Wandel Robinson, he's going to be that utility guy. I talked about him briefly in the first look lineup. He's bare min 3K, and he is a guy who's going to get handoffs from the backfield. They're going to do like tricky things to try to get the ball in Wandel Robinson's hands. Kadarius Toney, only 4-1. We know the type of big games that this dude had last year. If you end up going with, why am I blanking on his name? Daniel Jones. If you go with Daniel Jones, pairing him with a cheap Kadarius Toney gets you a cheap little stack right there. And Wandel Robinson. I mean, you're getting a super cheap stack where Daniel Jones is going to get you points on the ground, and also if he's throwing the ball, you're going to get some points from these two guys as well. I think it's an interesting spot. It's definitely very risky because it's week one. We don't know how much of work Wandale Robinson is going to get. I just know what I've heard in camp and stuff like that he's a solid utility guy, and they're going to really try to get the ball in his hands. All right. Adam Thielen. I talked about him for a second. These two guys right here, I really need to take a second to talk about. Adam Thielen is a fantastic option in my opinion. 5'4". I know he had season-ending injury last year, all that stuff, but these guys have professional training, the best doctors in the world. All these guys. I mean, Adam Thielen, I expect to come back, be 100%. That's what I'm seeing at least. Adam Thielen against Green Bay, solid matchup, and he's just really a solid option for me this week, especially if you're playing Kirk Cousins. But even without Kirk Cousins, I think the usage is going to be there. I think with these defenses kind of zoning their attention on Jefferson these days, Adam Thielen's going to have some big games. And we already know the report that him and Kirk Cousins have together. So I love Adam Thielen. I think that's too cheap at 5'4", and I'll definitely have a good bit of exposure to him. Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson. Don't know much about this guy, but what I have seen about Dotson is that pretty much this is a guy that's got some interesting situation here. He's the wide receiver 2 on this depth chart. He's right behind McLaurin. He's right behind McLaurin, and he's just interesting, man. This is like like the Curtis Samuel type of spot, except Curtis Samuel was trash. You know what I mean? Dotson has potential to really shine here. As we know, defenses are zoning in on McLaurin. They're not going to worry too much about this guy. All right, Jahan Dotson is a guy who is very interesting as a value option this week. I really feel fine with putting him anywhere. I mean, fantastic matchup against Jacksonville. Dotson is very interesting to me, and like I said, he's going to be in there every down. He's going to be a fantastic role player. He's going to fit that route very good. Okay, he's going to play a ton of routes, a ton of snaps. This is a fantastic spot. All right, you got the shaky quarterback situation, but Jahan Dotson's fantastic at 3-4. So he's a very solid value play for a guy who's going to be on the field as much as he's going to be. All right. It's just one of those situations where he's just super duper cheap and allows you to really get some good things around him. So over the last years, if you think about it too, over the last years, he has been with horrible quarterback options. Now he's got Carson Wentz, who's a little bit better. I'm not a huge Carson Wentz fan, but he's a little bit better than what they have seen in the past. And Dotson is going to be able to come out and have a decent, serviceable quarterback and do fine. So I really like Jahan Dotson. He's a solid option. All right, let's switch over to tight end. That's about it, though, on wide receiver. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams at spend-ups, and then those mid-range receivers that I talked about. Let's talk about it. Zach Ertz, number 1 for me at 4-4. Arizona without DeAndre Hopkins, without Kirk, all that good stuff, in a game where they're going to be behind. Zach Ertz is my number 1. Irv Smith Jr. is interesting to me. If you're running back in Arizona stack, Travis Kelce's a great option. But yeah, mostly I like to keep it short and simple, especially at tight end. Gerald Everett's interesting here. For the talent he possesses at 3.8, he's a solid option. So Irv and Gerald Everett right here in the 3K range are the 2 3K guys that I would lean in if I want to really spend downish. 2.5, Daniel Bellinger is popping for me at 2.5 if you want to really get sneaky, especially if you got Daniel Jones. But really, I'm going Zach Ertz, man. Darren Waller at 5.4. His Darren Waller's targets are not going to be like we're used to seeing him with Devontae Adams there. But with Devontae Adams there, also takes some attention off of Waller. So expect Waller to get a little bit more easy work. A lot of times defenses would just zone in on Waller, try to shut Waller down, and then make Carr beat him with Renfro every play. And so now with the targets that they have, which I think this Vegas offense is going to be fantastic this year. So Darren Waller at 5.4 seems pretty cheap, especially now that Devontae, yes, his target rate's going to go down, but Devontae Adams being there definitely takes that attention away from him. So that's going to be great. So Ertz, Waller, Kelsey if you're running back Arizona. That's pretty much it. Let's talk defense. At the defensive spot, I really like the Commanders at 2.5 as a value against Jacksonville. If you're really punting, you can go Raiders. As you can see, point per salary, they're up here. But Commanders, number one for me, really. They're at home in Washington, going against a bad Jacksonville team. I mean, like I said, Trevor Lawrence could be good eventually. But they just don't have a lot of weapons on that Jacksonville team. Travis Etienne, I think, has potential in the future and stuff like that. But I just don't know, man. I think Commanders are serviceable defense to punt. A lot of times I punt defense, and at 2-5, Commanders is the option that I'm really looking for. If you're spending up, if you have to spend up, which I don't recommend people do often, then you have the Ravens up here in a situation where they're probably going to get a good lead and then cause some turnovers against the Jets. Solid spot. 49ers against Chicago, but yada yada yada. But most of the time, you just punt defense and just get the other spots where you need to get them, and that's the Commanders for me. All right. So hopefully I was able to help. We were able to break down a good amount of people, man. Each position we were able to break down at least 10 to 15 players or something like that. Really keep the core as small as we can, mainly for each position. As you guys know, my main core guys, let's start quarterback. Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Mariota is my core right there. Running backs, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey. Deandre Swift is interesting for GPP. Austin Eckler is interesting for GPP. Wide receiver, Rondale Moore value. Remember, wide receivers where the value's at this week. All right, we don't have amazing value at running back. Wide receivers where the value's at. Grab those amazing values. Rondale Moore, Wandel Robinson, Jahan Dotson. These guys are fantastic value options. Adam Thielen at 5'4" is too cheap. All right, tight end, it's a small player pool. Ertz, Waller, Kelsey. You know what I mean? I mean, that's about it. And defense, punt Commanders, punt somebody, whatever you want to do. All right, thank you guys for joining me as always. GreenlightDFS.com, join the squad. Let's get it. We started the week off with a bang. Let's go ahead and end it with a bang as well for this Monday night. I mean, this Sunday night, Sunday game, Sunday slate, golly. And then the Sunday night showdown, and then the Monday night showdown. So we got a lot of money still to come to us. So go grab that membership at GreenlightDFS.com. Don't miss any more huge W's like you did yesterday. All right, let's get this money, y'all. Peace.